You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Welcome to the latest podcast of Growth Ceilings. My name is Jim Lovelady. I'm a professional EOS implementer. EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I teach, coach, and facilitate that for entrepreneurs and business owners. I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, Chris Corgnati, who is also a professional EOS implementer. I'm thrilled to have him here. Hello, Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. You got a great background, and we both come from storied backgrounds, which is typical of an EOS implementer. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in your world as an implementer.
Sure. I've been on my EOS journey for a little over a year, learned a lot. I tell people I think it's been harder than I expected, but a lot more rewarding than I expected as well. So you take the good and the bad when you're starting any small business.
And what did you do before becoming an implementer?
Sure. Yeah, I came a little different path to get here than most. I spent 25 years in the Navy, most of that flying airplanes, the old P-3C Orion. Retired in 2015 and spent the last decade running startups in the drone manufacturing and services sector. So 3 different companies with a bunch of consulting in between. And about a year and a half ago, decided I wanted to pivot, figure out what chapter 3 of my life was going to be. And that's when I found EOS and haven't really looked back.
There's a lot to uncover in what you just shared. First and foremost, and I say this with all sincerity because I am also a veteran, thank you very much, sir, for your service. It is highly valued by myself and all Americans. And it goes without saying, but I want to say thank you very much. And of course, we have Veterans Day coming up very soon. So celebration to you. I assume you went to the Naval Academy, am I correct?
Nope. It'll be a good dead giveaway. I went to Villanova. I was a ROTC guy out of Villanova.
I see. Nova. There's a storied school.
Yes. Yeah. We're hoping to get back to the storied status. Last couple of years been a little rough on the hard court. So
Understood.
we'll get back there.
Villanova's got a great legacy in college basketball. It's a name you recognize right away, typically in the, Sweet 16, if not the Final Four. Been there many times, and a great school. How many times have they won the championship, say, in our lifetime? 3 or 4 times?
3.
3, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
85, 16, and 18.
Fantastic. It was at Raleigh Massimino?
Yep, back in 85, sure.
Why do I remember that? I can't tell you what I wore 3 days ago, but I can remember that name from 1985, right?
Yeah. Coach Mass was still there when I showed up on campus. I remember bumping into him walking across campus.
So I assume Villanova, you're from Pennsylvania?
Actually, my dad was in the Navy as well, and so I moved all over the place when I was a kid. I was actually born in Maine, but we have a lot of ties to southeastern Pennsylvania. From my mother grew up in Reading, my daughter ended up in Philly, and my wife and I love the area, so we came back here just coming up on 5 years. So we live in Westchester, Pennsylvania, outside of Philly.
So for the business owners and entrepreneurs and business leaders listening to this podcast, these are great attributes. You're hearing Chris, 25 years in the Navy, was part of a Navy family. He's moved all over the place. He's gotten all sorts of character and attributes built that help him become an effective EOS implementer. So congratulations, Chris. Great story.
Thanks, Jim. And it's funny, I think one of the greatest things that we learn in the military, both as a kid moving around and then when I joined myself, is you really learn how to read people and organizations and sort of emotional intelligence and how to navigate conflict. And it's because you're forced to do it, right? Every couple of years, you're moving to either a new school, a new squadron, a new ship, a new whatever, and it's someplace you've never been. You're doing something you've never done before with people that you've never met, and you got to get in and you got to figure it out and learn how to navigate that. So those skills, I think, certainly help me in the session room with my clients.
And actually, I'll piggyback on what you just shared. I concur with everything you said, and based on my own experience in the Air Force, accountability, discipline, structure, clear roles and responsibilities, commitment to the objectives of the military and the organization, for yourself, the Navy, Air Force for myself. And these characteristics, these skills, these attributes are what make business leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs effective if they're able to accumulate that. And so when I go into a classroom, much like you, I enjoy the sessions because that kind of oozes out of me as an implementer. And I tie that in with a little entertainment along the way as I'm teaching a focus day or a vision building day, 1 or 2, or the quarterly pulsing meetings as we go through the entire EOS journey together.
Yeah, I do enjoy it, and just navigating in the human energy in the room, and you can see when the light bulb comes on, or when people get excited, or even when there's conflict, because we teach healthy conflict, right? We don't want passive people just nodding their head all the time. We want to generate that back and forth, because that's where the magic happens, right? That's where all the great ideas are. So being able to sense that and funnel it in the right direction, it's just a lot of fun.
Well, let's expand on that a little bit. Tell me about, you said you started last year. So you bought a franchise like I did. I graduated from my boot camp back in May of 2024. So I've been doing this a year and a half. And I believe yourself, you were August of last year?
September, so I was about 6 months behind you.
Fantastic. So what's your favorite part about being an EOS implementer?
It's when, sort of after the session, when you're walking out to the car, and somebody pulls you aside, and they just, this simple recognition, they're like, "Hey, Chris, that we would have never had that conversation if we hadn't been here today," or you pushed us to get to a conclusion to a problem that's been sitting on the table for a year. So those simple thank yous, and the realization that you're not just helping companies, you're helping people. So there's really both sides of that, and that's where it gets super satisfying. I mean, that's, if you don't get excited about that, then you're probably in the wrong business.
You're going to bring a veteran to tears. I love that. I think that is outstanding. And I share in the same feeling as you. It's a qualitative moment. And I love what you described, because as a sales and marketing leader throughout my 40 years in business, and that was post Air Force, I've always said to people that I've coached along the way, and I've hired hundreds of salespeople over the years, that the best moments are those unscripted moments. You've done your presentation. You put your laptop in your backpack, and now you're packing up to say goodbye. And perhaps the primary point of contact or other people in the room are letting their hair down. And if you did a good job, oftentimes that's where the golden nuggets occur. That's where they share true verbatims that mean something, that go beyond the meeting itself. And I've been in many, many, many presentations where I always found that downtime that you described was the best stuff. And those 10 minutes, it took a day and a half to get to where you're going and all the preparation, all that kind of thing. But those few moments that are perhaps post meeting, that you get somebody giving those verbatims to you, they're golden. And I've earned more opportunities as a result of that. And I've learned more about the people I've been either hired by, working for, selling to, all the rest. And it's just a great feeling when you get that kind of feedback and what you shared. So congratulations on that. It's really good.
I found that the greatest advertisement for you and I are people who are running on EOS, because they really do become such fans. And I've had prospective clients say, "Chris, give me the data. What's the return on investment? What's the average company's, sales increase, profitability increase, whatever the metric that they're struggling with." And I said, "We can kind of give you those numbers. I can give you my personal experiences." Said, "But you really have to talk to somebody who's running on EOS, and let them explain to you how it has changed not only the business, but their lives, and get them getting control of whatever they were struggling with, whether it be money, time, people, all the things that we work on." And to me, that's the best advertisement we could have is, "Hey, can I put you in touch with Mike, who I've been working with for a year, and let him tell you."
So both you and I share the same title, professional EOS implementer. We are certainly trained, we are practiced, and for myself, and maybe for yourself, prior to becoming an implementer, I was a customer. And so I had that experience and I got over to the dark side. Now I'm on the implementer side and I'm loving it and having a blast. I have a quick 1-minute story I could perhaps share with you a little later, but to the point that I wanted to make right now, you're in Philadelphia, am I correct?
Just outside Philly. Yep.
So how many implementers are there in your area?
So within about a 50-mile bubble, there's 31 of us.
Yes.
Currently.
And I shared with you earlier, my wife and I recently moved from Illinois, where we raised our family for 25 years. My son still lived there. And we moved to Florida, Southwest Florida, back in January of this year. I'm in an environment that's the opposite of you. There are 2 of us here in Southwest Florida. The other implementer is an expert level implementer. Of course, he's got 11 years with EOS. He's outstanding. And I'm in my 2nd year like you and building my practice. What I found is I'm in a green field area where I'm evangelizing. I'm passing out a lot of the traction books. I'm teaching people just the definition of EOS and explaining to them that it's a business operating system to help business owners, entrepreneurs, leadership teams all get on the same page to create discipline, accountability, and to truly make the business healthy, where everybody understands their role, their responsibility, who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. And I always like to throw in their contribution to the business. So whether you're the owner of the company or you're the person at the front desk, everybody in the company has an accountability, a metric, a measurable that they contribute to the business. They understand the value of that. And what I've learned both as a customer and now as an implementer, when I share that, people tend to gravitate, get it. And I've seen some transformations that are occurring with my current client base. And it's really phenomenal. But like you, as a professional EOS implementer, my big priority, most of my day is spent on business development. So you and I are in 2 different patches. You're in a more crowded environment where you got maybe pros and cons. You're in a more mature market with a lot of EOS implementers, but they've also kind of took the machete, kind of cut all the brush, passed out the books, did the talks, talked to a lot of people, spread the word and evangelize what EOS is. And so maybe that gives you some advantage. I know I came out of Chicago where there were 30 plus implementers there. So I had that similar experience, but then I come here to Southwest Florida and I'm starting from scratch. And I mean, basic, definition of EOS. So tell me about some of the pros and cons of being in that environment that you are in a more crowded implementer environment.
Sure. I think there's a little bit higher level of awareness in the marketplace just because of the number of folks here. But I would say 2 out of every 3 people that I talk to about EOS don't know what EOS is, or they've heard of it, but they don't really understand it. So there's still great potential. I think one of the other benefits about being here is we have back to, we said there's almost 900 of us worldwide now. Well, implementer number 7, a great guy's been doing this 18 years, lives right down the street from me. We grab coffee. And I've got 3 or 4 experts on speed dial that all, live within 10 miles a year that I can go ask questions to and pick their brain. So that's a great local support network and the camaraderie and collaboration. And we're looking to do some events together. So I think that that's certainly helpful. But yeah, I haven't seen it really as a hindrance. I want to get back to something you mentioned earlier, which is kind of a funny story. You said you came across the dark side. I wish I had, because I didn't know about EOS. And when I found out about it, I was mad. I'm reading traction. I talked to some people and I was like, where the hell has this been? Because I ran 3 different businesses and I tell people one of which it wouldn't have worked. It was sort of beyond saving it. So fundamental problems we wouldn't have fixed. The other 2, it would have made a huge difference. So that was what cemented it for me. I said, hey, this is something I know I could have used and wish I had had. And then the second part of that was, as I got into it, I realized one of the things I missed about being in the Navy was building high performing teams, right? That's what we did. When I used to fly into P3, we had a crew of 12 and every one of those was a small unit. You put them on $100 million airplane, send them halfway across the world to go do something, they better be a cohesive, functional, healthy, disciplined, and accountable crew
Right.
because they're going out to do some important stuff. So that part of it sort of resonated where now I get to work with owners and their leadership teams to make them that high performing, tight knit, healthy team for a different purpose. But the dynamics are very, very similar. And it just resonated with me when I got into EOS. So it's been awesome.
That's an interesting analogy, metaphor, tie, if you will. I think of basic training where, essentially you are taught the basic principles, you're taught the basic elements of what the expectations are. You better learn how to fold your clothes, your t-shirts, your underwear a certain way and follow those instructions effectively. And there's a reason for it. And if you're going to be put in charge of managing people, leading teams, managing large inventories, having all that responsibility, especially like for me, I was 19 years old when I went in. So you're asking a lot of brains that are mushy and just being formed of young people, and to have a discipline, accountability at those early ages and then carrying that through. I still fold my underwear the same way. I'm 62 years old, so I still
It's
fold my
not,
underwear the same way. It stays with me.
that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
good.
yeah. I mean, in business, it's funny. We tend to, I think, underestimate the capabilities of younger employees, right? And you and I lived in an environment where we lived like my life depended on a bunch of 19, 20, 21-year-old kids that were out turning wrenches and fixing the airplanes. And, it's it's a different environment, but you have that structure, that discipline and accountability that this is the way you're going to do this and here's why. And then, right. And then there's you measure and manage and lead according to those standards. So you get the outcome you want. And we routinely did that with young folks. And I think in business, we tend to underestimate their capabilities and don't give them the same opportunities that we were given at a very young age.
So two things come out of every prospect that I speak with. One, they struggle with sales. Everybody needs revenue, right? So I've been asked many times, hey, Jim, would you also sell for us? And that's not my role. It's not what I do today. But the other one is process. And while we talk about the 6 components of a business, process comes up almost every time. And it's the one area that companies struggle probably the most with process. It's kind of an unspoken problem set aside over here. Yeah, we've got people problems. We're not using our data effectively. Our meetings suck and all the rest. But process gets kind of shoved to the side. It's unsexy. It's not desirable.
Yep.
And when I am able to teach like the 3-step documenter for teaching processes we do with EOS, it just the light bulbs go on and people are like, where's this been? And much like you shared, I'll give you my quick short story. Back in 2011, I was in transition and I started my own LLC called Demand Dynamics. And really what the solution I created was designed for small to medium sized businesses that struggled with their investment in CRM. So think of Salesforce. And of course, before that, I was selling email marketing solutions and I was on the cutting edge of technology going from traditional direct marketing to digital marketing via email. So I combined CRM and email marketing together, kind of like peanut butter and chocolate. And I created a unique combination and I sold that as a solution and I was good at it. And I was doing this is back 2011, I was doing about 25 grand a month. I turned to a bunch of people that I knew that were friends of mine in business, made them part of the team. Well, I quickly learned it turned into chaos. And I quickly understood I didn't have a business operating system in play. And I didn't have a way to organize my team. I didn't have a way to organize my data, get the right people in the right seats, define my values, define the culture that I wanted, to use my meetings as ways to solve problems, to document processes that were important for repeatable outcomes that I wanted to ensure that we achieved each time. And quite frankly, I never gained any traction in the business. So you said this earlier, I wish I would have seen traction earlier. I know that if I had been introduced to traction back in 2011, my entire career, my trajectory of my career at that time would have gone in a completely different direction. In fact, I probably would have stuck with demand dynamics. As it turned out, I went to my largest client, worked there for just under 9 years, turned that into a $90 million business. After the pandemic, we parted ways, and I walked into a digital marketing company where I was hired as the chief revenue officer. When I walked in the door, that's when the CEO handed me the book Traction. He says, "Here, read this book." I'm like, homework assignment. Read this book. We're going to implement this ourselves. And the leadership team, I immediately could sniff it out. We had the wrong people in the wrong seats, and it was just total chaos. We were so bad at interpreting what Traction was telling us. We couldn't even spell EOS. That's how bad we were. So when we hired an implementer, that's when the light bulbs turned on and all of the foundational tools came together, and we understood what a level 10 meeting was about. We understood the importance of a scorecard and discipline to that and getting the right metrics on that scorecard. We did an accountability chart. We did the people analyzer, and we discovered very quickly we had wrong people in the wrong seats. And that was the first thing we needed to address. And all the other things that come along with our EOS journey. I loved it so much, and I became so mentally invested in EOS. I eventually met folks from EOS, and one thing led to another. And here I am now as an invested franchise owner, and I'm having a blast doing it. So while it's hard work getting the business development like it is as a consultant or a fractional, pick your acronym,
Right.
fractional, whatever, you kind of got to spin all the plates at one time, and you got to constantly feed that business development. Hence the reason why you and I are doing this podcast today, to not only share what we enjoy doing, but listeners may be picking up on some of the key elements of what we're sharing in our own experiences and what brought us to the level of professional EOS implementers.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and we all have a different perspective, different background, and a different style. And we tell people, hey, we just want you to use EOS. If you want to look at a couple of folks, you got to. It's the right fit. Who do you feel comfortable? Who do you want to get in the room and have those difficult conversations with? And who's going to push you enough, right? You don't want an implementer that's not going to ask you hard questions, right? Mark O'Donnell recently had a great post on Slack that said, hey, if you're not in danger of being fired by your clients every once in a while, you're not pushing them hard enough, right? So that was a great reminder that the value that we bring is to make that team and that company be as good as they can possibly be. And sometimes that takes some pushing.
And as I shared, I come from a sales and marketing background. I don't have it all mastered and figured. I've been doing it for 40 years. I'm good at it, and I'm good at leading the opportunity to a point, but it truly comes down to the business owner, the entrepreneur, realizing he or she have taken their business as far as they're going to go, and perhaps having a fresh set of eyes, instilling a business operating system, letting go of the vine, delegating and elevating their team, and doing all the things that we teach and facilitate as implementers. When they get a little bit of that, they realize very quickly what they were missing. It's kind of like what you were sharing, where's Traction been all my life? And I get that reaction frequently amongst our colleagues as implementers. That's a consistent story. But with clients and prospects I come across, they're like, wow, where's this been all my time? I speak frequently like you. I go to a lot of networking events and I present a lot. And I've done a lot of talking, a lot of sharing. And of course, you and I come from a world of abundance. Being in Philadelphia, coming from Chicago for myself, you being in Philadelphia, there's plenty to go around for all the implementers.
Sure.
It's really a matter of, I think on the client side, for the business owners, the entrepreneurs to understand what are they missing in their business and to quit fooling themselves that they're going to get to it or they've got all the answers.
Right.
When they become humble and open and honest with each other and with their teams, it transforms the business and it takes off from there. And much like you shared a little while ago, we were talking about golden nuggets and the verbatims that come from people you work with. I would say that, I've had a really good run with clients where they think that EOS is great. It is, don't get me wrong. But ultimately, they're the ones doing the work. I'm just teaching them the tools. The tools are a baseline, right? It's a foundation and it gets everybody on the same page. better yet, when our customers commit and they invest in the time and effort, and it's not a burden. And I know a lot of people I come across that think they understand EOS. They think it's a time crunch or a time burden, but actually it frees you up to do much more. And it's just the opposite of that. And I've had more than enough people affirm that, both in my own crisscross with other implementers and better yet with prospects and clients. So thoughts on that?
I almost started to laugh a little bit. And Tony, if you're listening to this, I'm talking to you. I've got a prospective client. He knows he needs EOS. He wants to do it. He keeps saying, Chris, I don't have the time. And I said, the reason you don't have enough time to do EOS is because you don't have EOS. So I said, this is literally what it's designed to do. So we'll get there. And the same kind of concept, you started talking about process earlier. And I've had people tell me, well, yeah, if you get too process oriented, it's going to kill our creativity and limit what we do. And I said, again, just the opposite. I said, we're going to systemize the basic stuff that you need to do every day. And you get it done the first time the right way, it's going to free up time, energy, and resources to go do the creative and do the things that only those leaders can do. So I said, once you get the basics, it's going to free you up to do, what you love to do and what you're meant to do.
If you have, it's kind of like we were talking about football, and I've got the bobbleheads, Detroit sports teams around me. We were talking about football earlier before we started the podcast, and it's kind of like the thing that you always hear in football. If you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And if you have more than one operating system, you certainly have none. And I come across more circumstances where founder, business owner, co-owner, co-founder, entrepreneur inherited the company. Time and time again, they either inherited or they hired people either they knew or their gut told them they were the right people. They hired Chris for operations. They hired Jim for sales. We hired Mary for finance. And, the list goes on for the leadership team. And the owner is running around doing all these things, managing the business, checking on everything in the business, at the same time is dependent on hiring the right people, thought that he or she hired the right people, but didn't have the checks, balances, the system in place to ensure, are these people the right fit for our culture? Do they match up with our core values? Do they understand our core focus? Did we map their seat and understand their core responsibilities? Did we assign specific metrics and expectations? Did we teach them how we go to meetings and how we solve problems and make that a priority in the time that we meet? And I know I'm hacking up the EOS language here, but this is my interpretation, both as a customer and now as an implementer. And it works for me. And, I come across more teams where the owner had the best of intentions, but they put people in a room and they expect them all to get along and figure it out. And again, if you don't have a simple operating system with tools that have been proven to work, you're probably on your way to chaos, if not already.
Right.
And I think if I had this earlier in my career, it would have transformed everything, whether it was my transition back in 2011 when I started my own business, or even before that. I've worked for a lot of dysfunctional teams where the best of intentions, these early stage companies run out, hire a bunch of people, and they say, hey, this person's coming from this company, this person's coming from that company, she's got this experience, he's got that experience, and they put it all together, and it's like throwing stuff into a blender and boom, it gets all mixed up and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard this too. Is you'll do one of our 90-minute meetings where we tell everybody, hey, this is what EOS is, this is what it's not, and figure out if there's a fit. And people at the end go, well, Chris, this sounds pretty simple. And I said, don't equate simple to easy, because you're going to do the work. I'd get back to your earlier point. I'm going to teach you how to do it. You're going to do the work. And the fact that it's simple is your employees and your team will not only understand it, but they will follow it. And it won't become too hard, and it won't get put on the shelf. I said the simplicity is part of the power of EOS. That's what it was designed that way on purpose.
I'm glad you shared that, because as a customer, when I was first introduced to EOS, and this is on me, I was very dismissive of EOS because I didn't understand it, number one. Number two, the first time I saw the Vision Traction Organizer, it's the 8 questions we use to define a vision for a business. And I was very dismissive of it. I thought, well, I can fill this in on a weekend. I can do this in my sleep, right? It does take a lot of work. It takes the collaboration of a healthy, calibrated team that is going to now commit to every one of the 8 sections of the Vision Traction Organizer, and it becomes the team's playbook. And just like you just said, when you share that as an owner, you share that as a leader with the organization, it harmonizes everyone because they understand the vision. They understand what the core values are. They understand your core focus, whether it's based on passion or some niche or what brought you to create the business itself. 3 is obviously your 10-year vision. What are you going to be 10 years from now? Is it based on revenue? Is it based on maybe geography or size of business? Help me understand what that vision is. 4, what's your marketing strategy? Who's your target customer? And what makes you unique in your field, in your industry? And then we get around to a 3-year picture and we define, hey, 3 years from now, which comes up quick, what is going to be our revenue, our profit margin? What are the things that we need to achieve between now and 36 months to achieve these goals? And then we get into a 1-year plan, which is essentially revenue, profit, and specific goals that we need to identify and achieve for the next 12 months. And then we wrap that up with ROTC, which are essentially 90-day priorities, followed by an issues list. And issues are opportunities for the leadership team to effectively solve an issue, to identify, discuss, and solve an issue to make it go away forever. And when we do that right, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that progression has got great value, right? Because people was like, hey, great, we're going to be $100 million company in 10 years. What does that mean? But if you take them from the 10-year to the 3-year to the 1-year to the 90-day priorities and the rocks, and like, what am I doing this week? Now they're like, okay, I have actionable steps, right? And we talk to our clients about, hey, just win the week, right? When you get to your next level 10 meeting, are the rocks on track? Have we done our to-dos? Are we doing the things we said? Because if we win the week, we're going to win the month, we'll win the quarter, we'll win the year. And so you get that, again, discipline and accountability, all about execution.
When you've got everybody on the same page, and this is what I learned from EOS, it eliminates all the ambiguity, all the gray matter goes away. When everybody's on the same operating system, doesn't matter if you're older, younger, black, white, skinny, fat, male, female, every contrast you can come up with, right? When everybody's on the same page and understands who we are, where we're going, and how we're going to get there, it makes a clear distinction for everyone. And it gives you a reason to really put yourself forward and invest in where we're going and how we're going to get there. And I think that, it's never too early for any business, any entrepreneur, any business owner to begin reading tools like Traction and investing their time and learning all these things that you and I are talking about today. I'm happy to make myself available to anyone that wants to learn all about EOS and learn more about my experience. I would certainly, because we operate in a world of abundance, would have no hesitation in referring someone to you. And, because a lot of people have that mindset, well, I got to shop around a little bit. I got to check around. I would just tell anybody listening to this podcast, we all operate, all implementers, all 900 of us operate from a world of abundance. And I encourage you to talk to other implementers because you're going to get the same kind of abundant mindset. And we're here to help you, number one. And we want to ensure that your experience with EOS is great. And I know if you put the time into it, it's going to turn into a great experience for you and your business.
Yep. 100% agreed.
Chris, is there anything else you think our listeners should be hearing right now?
No, I appreciate you reaching out and taking the time to do this. I enjoyed the conversation as always. You and I have had a chance to talk a couple of times. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you at the next QCE.
I'd like to thank our audience for listening in today. This was a unique conversation between Chris Corgnati and myself. We're both EOS implementers. We are both here to help you. So don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. And we'll look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. Thank you.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.